Hello, I'm a writer-director. I've just finished my second movie, but primarily I'm director. But in the long process, I became also a screenwriter, and I'm doing a lot of work as also as a screenwriter or script analyst here in Slovenia. And today I want to talk to you from the screenwriting perspective about Slovenian Story. Mostly, every writer or a film director, because usually in Slovenia, directors are also writers. I know that in all small countries, most directors write their own screenplays. But when I was thinking what to talk today here, I was thinking what kind of problems we have, and Clement already expressed a lot of scary figures, and I'm not going to speak about these scary figures. I'm going to speak just about two dilemmas. So I'm standing in front of you barefoot, because sometimes when I'm developing my new project, I have this kind of feeling. And it's mostly because of these two dilemmas that me and my fellow writers or directors are having here in Slovenia. I know that the case is the same maybe in other countries, but today I'm going to speak just about Slovenia. I'm going to talk about these two dilemmas from a screenwriter's point of view. What kind of problems Slovenian screenwriter or director face when he tries to write a screenplay. So these two dilemmas are: what kind of stories should Slovenian filmmaker make, and how to develop our stories. These two dilemmas, probably, I know that these two dilemmas every screenwriter and director are having everywhere, but I would like to highlight it in some different point of view. But first, we need to talk about the situation here in Slovenia. Slovenia is a small market, as Joško said, and is getting smaller and smaller because of admissions are decreasing every year. One reason is that these admissions are decreasing with every year is that cinemas or multiplex are now getting old, and mostly the films that are in these cinemas are American movies, so it's not a lot of room for Slovenian films. You can get maybe 1 week of the prime time in the cinemas, but after that the American film comes in, and that's really, really bad for us. And the third reason is because there are not enough movies produced every year. This was mostly the case in the past, but now things are getting slightly better, but we don't know what will the future bring, Maybe it will be better, maybe it will be worse, but it depends on decision makers. But I'm an optimist, and I need to be. So, what kind of stories should Slovenian filmmakers make? When I travel, I always ask people in that country if they know any Slovenian film or Slovenian director. Usually there is no answer. No name or no Slovenian title. Why is that the case? We made some great movies in the past. We made some great movies in not so distant past. And we had some success in the festivals. There were some films shown even in European cinemas and in America, maybe. So how can our stories, our films can be recognized by Slovenian audience and by international audience or festival? This is one thing that probably every filmmaker is asking himself. What are the right stories to tell? So again, when I go to the festivals, I'm talking with foreigners, from industry. And they say that our stories should be more edgy, more maybe festival-oriented, or they expect from us stories from a not-so-distant Balkan history. But our history is a little bit different, When you say that you are from former Yugoslavia, everybody mentions the war. But in Slovenia, the war didn't have such a big impact directly, like in Bosnia or in Croatia or in Serbia. So we cannot talk about these stories because they are not something that we feel that are the right stories, and we feel that Bosnians or Croatians or Serbians has more right to tell these kind of stories than we. So I'm a strong believer that every movie that we should make needs to say something about us, about our country and our problems that can be understood on an international market. They cannot be, at first sight, that cannot be such appeal for the festival directors or somebody else, but that can be good films, I know the answer, what kind of movies we should make, I know that the answer is, for this dilemma, is just to make a great movie, but it's harder to get noticed because they are not interested in seeing something if they expect something else from us. And that's a big problem when you're approaching to the festivals or even international market. So I know that we don't want to make movies to please the festival selector because he's expecting that kind of movie. I want to stay true to myself, to the stories that I have a feeling that I need to tell. And I know that other Slovenian storytellers want to do the same. So when we, the filmmakers, are talking what to do, what's the solution of this problem, there is always somebody that says that we need to shoot movies to tell our stories in the genre, and they need to be in English, And that will bring us the market to show our movies abroad. But I question myself, is this really the truth? So let's see one example. Let's say you write a great thriller in English and it's made into an English-speaking movie. Is it more interesting to see great thriller in English or in Slovene? Because when you are making an English thriller, you are in the pool of every thriller that is made in Anglo-Saxon world, and it's not so different. Or it would be more interesting to see a great Slovenian thriller, and I think that the answer to this question is obvious. It would be easier, I think, even to market good Slovenian thriller, because it comes from Slovenia, and everybody will say, what, thriller from Slovenia? That could be interesting. So this is my conclusion for the first part of Dilemma. I want to just open some questions to have a discussion later. And I want to go to the next dilemma that I have. So what happens when you decide what kind of story you want to tell? You proceed to the next dilemma, how to develop our stories. There are two statements that usually producers here in Slovenia has about screenwriting and screenplays. These are two statements. There is no good stories or screenplays. There is not any good screenwriters. That I hear a lot from Slovenian producers. So that's what's the problem behind of these two statements? That means that it's really hard to be a screenwriter here in Slovenia because there is no system to work, you know. So the symptomatic statement here in Slovenia is that screenwriting as a profession is a big problem because it was undervalued for such a long time and there was no good school for it. I disagree because it's not an excuse. It cannot be. Now in the age of internet and the world as a global village, you can learn storytelling. It's a hard work, but it can be done. I think that the problem is somewhere else. I think the problem is on the producer's side. Most screenplays here in Slovenia, and probably in the smaller countries, that the screenplays are written on spec. So you write it and you deliver to the producer, and he applied to the fund. And the second sentence that I chose from, I borrowed it from a startup world. There is no seed investment. What I mean with seed investment, I think that producers should invest in development of the idea, to the treatment, and to the first draft. There is no such case here in Slovenia. They expect that you should come with a screenplay and they will apply it to the fund, to the producers. If they get the money for a production, then it's a go. If you don't get the money, then it's nothing. And then it becomes a catch-22 for writers and directors because you get really stuck very early on. So how can you write a solid screenplay if you need to do something else to pay a bill? So the screenwriter is more of a hobby here in Slovenia than a profession. But early in career, I've decided that the film is not going to be my hobby, it's going to be my profession. And I'm fighting every day for this. At this place, I must say that Slovenian Film Center has a program for writers to develop their stories, but it's the only program with a limited budget, so not many projects are supported every year. I think when you're developing a story, you need to place a bet on as many horses as you can, because the quantity will deliver the quality also. For me as a screenwriter, it's not just the question of the money, but it's also when a producer is interested in a story, he strongly believes in a story, then he or she needs to put the money where his mouth is. Because usually producers here really don't want to invest any kind of money into the development of first idea and maybe a first draft. It's not the case for every producer. You have some exceptions, and they're doing well, but usually this problem is more, I see it as the problem because how the films were produced in former Yugoslavia, it was different kind of model, and these old producers, they didn't adapt to the new model like the rest of the world, you know, to slowly to make some sort of risk to develop the screenplays, because they feel it's too big of a gamble for them. And my answer to them is that if you don't gamble, you don't win. And so what's the future, like Clement said? And I said before that I'm an optimist, and I think that Slovenian film has a bright future. A few years ago, when I was in film school, our film school was one of the most successful film schools in the world. The shorts got awards all around the world. The shorts got Student Academy nominations, EFA nominations, and won a lot of important festivals. These films were made by filmmakers who are real storytellers, and now these filmmakers are making their first movies. I believe that you will talk in the next years about the new Slovenian wave, and you will appreciate the movies that are coming, because I know all of these generations, and it's going to be really interesting future. But, and there is always a but, we hope that decision makers, government, and producers would support us and make this right environment to tell the right stories, you know, the Slovenian stories. So this is my conclusion, and I'm open to the debate.
Yeah, hi. I come from a small country myself, even smaller than Slovenia, Luxembourg, and I can totally identify with everything you said, with the question, what kind of stories do you tell if you come from a country where maybe you have a history that is not as dramatic as some of your neighbors have, where the question comes up, should you make a movie in your local language that not many people understand, but it might be more authentic than if you do it in French or in English or in German or whatever. And we also had the same problem that the development and the treatment stage was not recognized well enough by the producers, and basically the system was the same, that you go with your script and either the producer gets the money from the film fund and then it gets done. The situation has changed in the last years. We have better script development funds for national projects, and we also now very recently, and this is what I wanted to say actually, we've been lobbying as an association for direct aids for script development, meaning money going directly to directors without passing through producers. I think this measure exists in other countries, in France, in Croatia, in Belgium, and it was a long fight. It was really 5 years, but it's been just granted last month. So it's a small help. It's not a lot of money, and it's for the first stage, for the first treatment. So you can develop more ideas with taking more risks than if more money is involved, and you tend to take less risks. You can also take the risks that you start developing ideas that might just not get produced one day, but you can take more risks in the beginning. So we don't know what comes out of this yet, but this is a possibility for us as Luxembourgish screenwriters and directors to develop more ideas and come up with more authentic Luxembourgish film productions. Yeah. So it's just an idea I wanted to share. The maximum you can have now, yeah, you know that in Luxembourg we have more money than so the maximum you can get is 10,000, which here would be already a lot. All people who come from a professional writing background. So this is not strictly limited to film professionals, but also people who come maybe from literature or from theater, for example. Sorry? It includes directors, yeah.
In Slovenia, if you apply to the film fund, you can get around 5,000 for the first draft, which is you can pay a little bills, you know, you can attend some workshop, which is great. But I think this number of supported project with me, it should be twice as big or 3 times bigger, because you never know. Some stories stuck in the treatment, some stuck in the first draft, some are stuck in the third draft, and some are made into a film, you know. It's a gamble, but I think it's a gamble that producers should accept, you know.
No, documentary is less. So it's open to fiction, documentary, and animation.
This is a typical mistake. The problem is the documentary is a form of film that depends on development completely. So, like in Croatia, strategy is to have the even sums, and when it comes up to the production development, then it goes even higher in documentary than in feature very often.
Well, I'm a documentary film director, so I totally agree with you. We're already happy that the development stage in documentary films now gets recognized, so that's already a big step.
How it's made in bigger countries like UK or Germany or France, because if we talk in smaller countries, I also have a feeling that maybe in France, they also feel that they are just France and they're not English, and their films are small and only in France. They're getting distributed just in France. And in UK, to draw a line between American and UK production, maybe how do you know that the production is British against, you know, they have these concerns?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but there's well sort of defined rules about what counts as a British film that are clearly kind of set out, and there's a sort of, you know, test that you have to apply, cultural test basically to become a British film. But the point that I was going to pick up was that in Britain, the BFI funding for film, you have to be a producer to apply. And I think this is absolutely wrong. There is a fund available in England for first feature directors, where you can apply as a director. So I mean, I've just applied for that. Fuck knows if I'll how I'll get on. But you know, it feels very inhibiting that there isn't you know, the opportunity that you have in Luxembourg, for example, to, even if it's a small thing or quite a risky thing, to apply. And I think certainly that's something that we should be, you know, pushing for, is that as access for authors really to have money, you know, to be able to come to the funds.
Yeah, the rule in Belgium, because Belgium is also a small country, the rule for when for the screenplay is you can go with a producer or you can go alone.
It's
there
the
is
same
no
in Slovenia.
problem. And the amount is 12,000. It's not so bad, but also we have 15 films, no more. But 15, 12,000, it's a good amount. Then you have the help to the pre-production, and you have then it's 35, and the pre-production you can work on the level really on the production, casting and everything, but also on the rewriting, and then you have the production. So you have three steps.
It's the same here in Slovenia. I was mostly talking about developing the screenplay, but then we also have the development of the project. Probably Joško could say more about it. And there is also one problem that I didn't express here when I was talking about. Sometimes it's really hard to talk about the screenplay with the producer because they don't know how to read it. You know, they read it just how many days they have to put everything in. You know, my great experience was with the UK producers because they have a different kind of background. They can more talk about the story, and I think the new generation of Slovenian producers are learning that, and we can talk with them about the story, not about the production or the budget, but about the story. You know?
But for all little countries, we are always in co-production.
Yeah.
And it means when you are going, for instance, in France or Luxembourg, for us, or England, the feeling of the producers is completely different. So you have a story, you have a screenplay working in your country. You arrive in front of an Italian producer, and he says, "Well, what's that? I don't understand. Could you rewrite something?" And you rewrite something. And when you're coming back home, they said, "Well, it's not the same story. Could you rewrite something?" It's really
it's a tricky question. But I think if you have a good producer, then the producer would say, "No, we don't want to make this kind of sacrifice because of the story." But usually producers are evil, you know.
Yeah, but I guess also, you know, one aspect of also what you've been talking about, well, how to make a successful film. Well, nobody knows anything, right? That we know. The other thing is, if you are a director, you must be a person who wants something. If somebody wants to be a producer, the same applies. If this person is not interested in stories that can be marketed, whatever. Okay, let me just give you a little view of the German situation. There, in Germany, there are produced over 200 feature films every year. There are, of course, for that amount of feature films to arise, to be made, there are many more scripts being submitted. So you can do that through different the FAA, which is the national thing. So and you get up to 30,000. It's also, we opened up the commissions that so that there are also creative people deciding on that. Yet, there, the catch is that after these scripts have been judged, have been developed, which you also can do as a writer on your own. But it's always better to have already a producer and even a distributor signing letters of intent that they would be interested in producing that. But then what happens is if you get to the actual funding of your feature film, which on average in Germany is between 3 and 4 million euros per feature film, the point is that on the funding bodies, it's the TV stations, both private and public, who put the money in, and what they do is they are not interested in feature films for the cinema. They just want to get their money. I'm being a little bit sarcastic or ironical. They want to get their money back, so they don't look for cinematic qualities. That they say, like, is this as a feature film? Does this story have a local appeal? Can it also have perhaps travel well, as the Scandinavians are very skilled at? And then the project gets killed in the scope of the TV stations, who say, like, we only want, you know, we're only interested in prime time TV movies. So then again, even if you get started as a writer, the next frustration can be that when it comes to the development and production, that they want a different story, literally. So just to give a view of...
that explains a lot of me about German cinema.
Yes, and that explains, why hasn't there been a German film in Cannes or major film festivals? This, I'm not saying this is the answer, but this is definitely one of the aspects of that the German films are also not quite up to the level they could maybe.
Yeah, because if you look at the films of the film schools, you have some really great examples, you know, every year.
I think the biggest conflict in filmmaking is when the director is also his own producer, because then he's in constant conflict with himself, you know. He's in constant conflict with, he wants the best for his film, as much extras, as much beautiful scenes and so on. On the other hand, he has no money. So, and he's on one hand financer, and on the other hand artist, you know. And this is the worst case scenario, I think. Of course, they are not all producers perfect. Nobody's perfect, you know. We hear this from Marilyn Monroe already. But I think that also the producers, you have different types of directors. Some are directing just own scripts, some are just directing scripts of the others, some are combination. You have also different combinations of producers. You have creative producers, you have line producers who become producers, you have accountants who become producers, and etc., etc. So I think that each author or each director just need to find the person who fits to him, or that they make a perfect couple, you know, because I think that the strength of the movie is just the couple of these two persons. So producers and directors are the main objective. If you have a perfect couple, then you have a successful movie.
Yeah, but that's like searching for a perfect wife, you know.
Yeah, but you do that all your life, and you find one, and if you have bravery, you find
I completely agree with you.
Know? Or you don't find anyone. And you have just one night stands.
Hello. First of all, thank you very much for the hospitality. Until now, we are going very well. I'm coming from Cyprus. And don't be afraid, I will not ask you to solve the cinema Cyprus problem, because believe me, it's more difficult to solve Cyprus problem instead of the cinema Cyprus problem. I was trying for the last 2 hours to find something from a Cypriot point of view, to see what common do we have. And believe me, we are so far from all these discussions, because we have a lot of problems. And I don't know from where shall I start. We are in a country where the government gives us 700,000 euros per year to make cinema. This is number one. And I don't know how to solve it. It's a long story. They don't believe in this industry. They don't know the industry. They know the industry of tourism. They know the industry of casinos, but they don't understand the industry of cinema. And sometimes we have directors that they don't believe that cinema is industry, and it's not only art. We have sometimes these problems. The other thing is, we have to realize that we have, as European now, I'm talking as a European, several problems. European cinema, USA cinema, American cinema. We are trying as Europeans to face this enemy. How? I don't know. We have to face it. We have small countries and big countries in Europe. Countries like Germany, France, England. They have a lot of money, but still they cannot face the American theaters. They cannot go in as they wish as they wish to do, to face the American cinema. On the other hand, there are countries with small countries and big countries. We have the problem of the language. France, for example, or German, they cannot face this problem. How to go in the cinema against the English-speaking cinema. So the question for me is, what do we want? What a Greek or a Croatian or Belgium or Luxembourg director wants? Does he want to make Hollywood movies? Does he want to make local movies from his country successful? Does he want to make movies from Europe successful with a lot of tickets, or to make some good movies for their family and for friends? I don't understand what we try to do. I mean, I understand, of course, but we have to find a common target. We have to find, maybe we have to separate the problems, because I'm confused personally, as a European director and mostly as a Cypriot. But forget the Cyprus, because it's another chapter. Thank you very much.
I don't know how to answer to this, but but I think that we should make movies as directors that we feel are the right movies that we want to make. You know, I think it doesn't matter if it's a commercial movie or it's an art house movie. It's just it's just the feeling that you have inside, what kind of stories you want to tell. But probably not most of you wouldn't like to hear this, but I think when the cinema is in problem, if I was a producer, I would invest in the new talents, the future directors, and to build new screenwriters, new directors, you know, to have some sort of new wave, and maybe then this new wave can change the local cinema. So if there are not any questions, thank you very much. Thank you.